Yeah, good bike ride?
It was a great bike ride, thanks. Yeah, lovely. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's a
very friendly folk, and you know, nice chatting with people. So.
Lovely spot here down at the Motueka Wharf. Got some interesting tools here. Tony, tell us a bit about these tools and where you used them.
Okay, right. Well, is a Chenard hammer, and American Yvon Chenard designed them, and they were revolutionary for ice climbing because before we had a hammer like this, and also an ice axe with a curved pick the same. And the beauty of this is that you can just flick it into the ice, and it'll hold you. Previously, the ice axes had a straight pick, which you couldn't, you know, and people just used them for cutting steps. So it was really revolutionary. It was 1970, and I think we left in early April, I think, and we drove. We bought an ex-army truck from near Nottingham, and it cost us all of £150. And we drove right across Europe, into Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, and then into Turkey, right across Turkey. And the vehicle worked out really well because it was actually a van, and we got 3 people in the front. There were 7 of us all together, so we had 3 people in the front, and then the people in the back were, we had all our gear was in boxes, and we had our foam mattresses on top, so we could lie down on, and there was a window we could look out of as well, so we could see what was going on.
So some slept in the back while some...
Yeah, so we had 4 people, so we could take it in turns and we could sleep. And the area is called the Hindu Kush, which is a range of mountains near the Pakistan border. We'd intended to climb a mountain called Kori Bandaka, and it proved to be too dangerous for us at that particular year. Anyway, there was a lot of avalanches coming down. It just wouldn't have been very sensible to have gone on it. It was actually climbed a couple of years later by a British team. It must have been totally different conditions because they got up it all right. So we lowered our sights to a neighbouring peak called Kori Bandaka, but we got most of the way up that, but proved to be quite a lot of loose rock. We climbed up the ice face, and the highest part was actually rock. So we didn't complete it, but it was an interesting trip, and an interesting drive back again. And I applied for Kenya because I knew there was some good climbing in Kenya, and we went out there, and just really the teaching was good because the kids were interested. The kids wanted to pass the exams, and so there was no discipline problems. And I had my most enjoyable teaching that I've ever had was out there teaching African boys. It was just a African boys school, and it was quite close to Nairobi. I joined the Mountain Club of Kenya, and that was I think I climbed Mount Kenya about 13 times during my time.
So it was a regular.
So all the way around, and interestingly enough, because we were keen to climb Kilimanjaro as well, and a friend of ours, Ian Allen, who was a local, actually born in Kenya, and he was a keen climber. And anyway, we arranged with him, what we made the mistake of starting from Nairobi in the morning with the intention of walking up and getting right through the forest before dark, but we ran out of time, and we ended up having to camp in the forest. And we just got settled into the tent when Ian heard this. Sounded like a saw, and it was a leopard growling. And Ian said, "Christ, that's a leopard!" and then we heard it again, closer, and we didn't know what to do. But Ian being an old Africa hand, he said, look, we just got to make as much noise, drive it away. Anyway, I think we had our billies there, and we banged on the billies and we yelled out and made as much noise as we could. So there we are. So we didn't make Kilimanjaro that particular year.
Yeah.
But then the last year before I left, I was keen to climb it. So across there, and our plan was to climb the Great Breach Wall, which is an unclimbed face. There was a gap called the Western Breach, and the route that went up that.
Yeah.
And the Great Breach Wall was to one side of it. Anyway, we took a full day to climb up to a big terrace where we stopped and bivvied for the night, and we looked up above us, and what we could see above us was like an enormous icicle, and we decided, we weren't really equipped to climb something like that. It would have been really difficult ice climbing, and probably quite rotten ice as well. And then it was eventually climbed by Reinhold Messner.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, so
it was certainly much too hard for us. But anyway, we were able to. It was a big terrace, and we were able to move right a few hundred meters, and we continued up the Heim Glacier to the summit.
Okay, yeah.
And you actually get into the crater, inside the crater, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
And then you climb up one of the inside crater faces to get to the summit. Well, it wasn't really climbing; it was sort of walking. Anyway, we made the summit, so that was quite exciting. It's in Uganda.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it was the what's called the Ruwenzori, which is also called the Mountains of the Moon. And the Mountains of the Moon were legendary way back in Roman times, and they were looking for the source of the River Nile. Yeah. And it was postulated that there was the Mountains of the Moon, and it was correct that just one source of the River Nile anyway comes from there. So anyway, this was in the days of Idi Amin, the notorious dictator in Uganda. So we were a bit cagey about going, but thought, why not? It's our last opportunity, and we'd heard on and drove right across to the other side of Uganda, and we got to the approaches to the mountain, and we managed to hire some porters, and we had some. They apparently lived on dried fish caught in one of the local lakes there. Yeah. So we bought a supply of dried fish that we could give to the porters, and we actually a whole network of huts in the Ruwenzori range, which had been built by the Mountain Club of Uganda. Yeah. Which probably wasn't even in existence anymore. But the huts were quite serviceable. I mean, they didn't have any mattresses on the beds or anything, but there were bunks there, and we had our own mattresses that we brought with us, or our thin pads that we brought with us to sleep on. So they were quite comfortable. So we stayed in quite a few of the huts. We climbed most of the major peaks, and anyway, we were keen to climb from the other side, and I actually bordered on the country which in those days was called Zaire. It's actually called the Congo, I think now. It changed its name back to the Congo. Yeah. Zaire. And we went over a pass, dropped down, and there was a hut on that side as well, and we stayed in that hut for a night, and then we did various climbs from that point, and John and I did a climb, which it was a gully or a couloir, as John didn't want to use a French word for it. Yeah. It was something, Western Gully or something. I don't remember the names of all the peaks, so I can't really tell you too much. But anyway, we climbed up that gully, which proved to be quite good, and then we we came back. We found an easier descent and came back down. But when we got back to the hut, there was other people there, including some Africans, and it turned out there was a Swiss party that had been guided up by the African rangers, and we were told that we were under arrest for illegally entering Zaire. So we weren't very happy about that. Anyway, John said, just pack your bags, you know. So we packed up and got ready to leave, and then on a signal, when we were all ready, off we went. Of course, they tried to stop us.
Yeah.
But we had ice axes, and they didn't. They weren't armed, fortunately.
Yeah.
But we suspected that the reinforcements would be coming up that might be armed. So, you know. So John threatened one of them with his ice axe, and they backed off and let us go.
Yeah.
And we made a very fast ascent of a glacier, which took us right back into Uganda, and we felt happy once we were safe in Idi Amin's Uganda. So that was an interesting trip.
Escape to Idi Amin. That's an interesting story. Yeah.
Idi Amin, yeah. Of course, this was only a few months before the hijack.
Oh yes, in Tibby and all
the plane
that.
that was hijacked and landed at Kampala, and they were there, and I think it was an Israeli plane. I think. Of course, the Israeli commandos eventually went and sorted it out.
Yeah.
So that was it. We'd do as much skiing and climbing as we could. We'd go on skis as far as we could, and then when it got steeper, you take your skis off and put your crampons on and carry on to the top of the peak. Using your ice axe and crampons. So we did nothing terribly hard, but we climbed the normal route up a lot of the peaks around there. I think the best one I did was actually climbing Mount Tasman.
From the skis.
Not far from Mount Cook itself.
Yeah.
And we did that from the west side.
Yeah.
And
so some enjoyable years there. And you ended up going with the New Zealand expedition to Mullen beaching.
Yes. And this would have been in 1981. And I got an invitation to join the expedition, and the leader, Austin Brooks, was a good friend of mine. Helpful. All the Chinese gave us some pictures, and we worked out which was more dimension. The picture was a panorama showing the main peak, Shishapangma, with a peak up on each side, and then Mullen on the other. And Mullen was quite a pointy peak, but it looked quite a bit more impressive. And we were looking to climb an unclimbed. Well, there were no climb faces on it anyway, but we didn't really want to go up a way that had been gone before. We wanted to find our own route. In the end, it proved to be a bit too steep. Yeah. And we followed the original route that the Chinese had used for climbing Shishapangma. And it was a big plateau. Went down, and then back up again to the foot of the ridge on Mullen, and then we made our camp 5 actually at that point, and then it was one day up to the top and back down to camp 5 again. I wasn't in the first team to do it. The first team was actually Bruce Farmer and Dick Price that were on the first one, and there'd been a bit of bad weather, and we were quite surprised they'd actually sneaked it in in a day when the weather had cleared. Yeah. And they climbed it. So anyway, we knew the route and which way to go, and I was in a party of 4, which did the second ascent.
Yeah.
So there was no great difficulty really. It was just a long way.
Yeah.
And we made actually 5 camps. We had to carry.
Yeah, a lot of gear to carry.
And so it was a long way.
And what height was that mountain? How high did?
It was 7703 meters.
7703. I think at that time it was the highest mountain ever climbed by a all New Zealand expedition, wasn't it?
Yes, probably.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
you were the forerunners.
Yes,
for some later expedition.
One of the conditions was that we would all have New Zealand passports, and before the expedition, I just lived for 3 years in New Zealand, so I was eligible to
get one.
To get a passport. But I think Austin put a bit of pressure on with Brian Tallboys, and he sort of rushed it through. So I had my New Zealand passport. So we were all New Zealanders.
All officially New Zealanders.
So went up to as many of the kayaking triathlons as we could, and one of them was called the Ghost to Ghost. And that was that was from a place that was supposed to be haunted.
Okay.
And another one called the Shortest Day.
Yeah.
Of course, the one day coast to coast was called the Longest Day.
Yeah.
And the Shortest Day was based in Twizel.
Uh-huh.
It was the weekend closest to midwinter.
Man, that would have been a bit nippy.
But that's involved.
Yeah.
It was called the Southern Traverse.
The Southern Traverse.
Yes.
Yeah.
The original one had, well, in French, it was Le Grand Traverse.
Yeah.
So it was the Southern Traverse. So
and what year was that?
and that would have been 92.
92. How many times did you do the coast to coast in the end?
I did it a total of 4 times.
Yeah.
I did the course after completing the 2 days as an individual, I qualified. I did it in less than 15 hours, so I qualified to do the 1 day.
Mm-hmm.
So the following year, I did the 1 day.
Yeah, and that was significantly harder or the same? Or?
No, it was okay. I think I was well enough trained. And, so I kept at it.
And he rides on, a man still going strong, knowing how to live every day to the fullest. Good on you, Tony. Keep it going.